My name is Lisa McNiven. I'm an archivist at the Naval Museum of Halifax, and today I brought in two examples of food survival tins and an RCN portable heater. These artifacts are quite rare because they were never meant for long-term usage. If, God forbid, something happened, you were to use them immediately. I suspect after the war they were either kept by sailors or put in naval stores and then eventually disposed of.
During World War II, there were few places that carried more risk than the heavy and frigid North Atlantic Ocean. The threat of U-boats kept the Royal Canadian and merchant navies on high alert, but engaging in combat afloat a battlefield impartial to military allegiance meant evading enemy attacks did not always eliminate the possibility of crisis. Day in and day out, sailors had to manage the elements, and in instances where members were forced or fell overboard, they needed all the help they could get. To sustain those awaiting aid, the RCN issued several survival provisions. With hope and belief in the mental and physical fortitude of its men and women, these supplies aim to increase the chances of successful rescue missions.
Lisa, welcome back to Militaria. What have you brought us today?
Today, I've brought examples of World War II naval rations and also an RCN portable heater.
Wow. So these rations and the heater were meant to go overboard.
Absolutely. They were meant as a contingency plan if, unfortunately, you did find yourself in the water. How do you sustain yourself? Do you needed food to eat? You needed a portable heater to keep you warm. These were essentials in case of unexpected fall or sinking.
Survival at sea was a prevalent issue for the Royal Canadian Navy, especially early on in the war where a lot of our ships were being sunk by German U-boats. They had to quickly come up with solutions of how can we ensure that our sailors and personnel would survive the open ocean to a time that they possibly could be rescued, which speaks a lot to the value of human life. And so what I really enjoy about these particular artifacts are they're unopened. So the contents that would have existed in them are still there, which makes them extremely rare and valuable in our collection. These are beautifully preserved artifacts of these emergency rations and survival gear, but the fact that they're unopened means that the contents are still in the actual containers. Example for like this food container, it has biscuits and bits of chocolate in it, which I think is fantastic. And I also really enjoy that on the can it has been preserved that it tells whoever is to consume the contents of this can to consume it slowly, because you can imagine when you had gone overboard, you've been surviving for a couple of days at sea, you probably wouldn't have eaten these right away. You would have saved them to the absolute moment when you would have needed them. And so you would have been dehydrated and very hungry. And so to make sure that you eat these slowly meant that you kept it down instead of bringing it back up. And this tin is a beautiful example of a well-preserved ration tin at the time. And on the bottom here, you can see the pull tab. So the idea is you flip the tin over, pull the tab, and the contents would be inside all lined up for you to take out and to distribute to any of the individuals that were with you. And what I love about the lifeboat heater is that RCN stamp, that this kind of gear is being issued by the Royal Canadian Navy, and that there is always an active effort of making sure that sailors had the best chance of survival. This lifeboat heater was meant to be a device that would keep not only the individuals in the boat a degree of warmth to help them from freezing, but they also could use it to heat up a small cup of water or just to create a little bit of degree of comfort in the middle of the cold Atlantic.
During World War II, the naval medical community and scientific community were very active in creating solutions to wartime dilemmas such as immersion foot and also food preparation, foodstuffs. Dr. McCallum was working with Commander Charles Best of Banting and Best, the insulin discoveries, and they were doing experiments on desalinization of water. And they'd come up with a process of heating the water and then afterwards adding the essential minerals back to the water. And that created a very important process for preserving water while serving at sea and also for food rations and foodstuffs that would be used in a lifeboat.
I think these are wonderful artifacts to preserve, Lisa. I mean, you had mentioned that it's about survival at sea, but At the Naval Museum of Halifax, we have several stories linked to survival at sea and what sailors and officers had to do to survive the very wild and open conditions of the North Atlantic. And I believe you've got one story in particular that you would like to tell us.
Yes, we have one individual, a Mr. Johnny Roland Sargent. He was serving aboard the Esquimalt when it was sunk by U-190. The sinking happened so quickly that he had no time for preservation or to grab any emergency gear. Mr. Sargent was thrown overboard, and at the time he was only wearing his underwear and he had a life preserver ring on. He's submerged in the water for a length of time, so he's suffering from hypothermia and immersion foot. Immersion foot was a real threat during World War II in a situation where you were thrown into the sea. It was a version of water trench foot.
From what I understand, he did survive the ordeal
He
and was
did.
picked up.
Yes.
He was definitely one of the lucky ones. I think, it's very interesting. His experience speaks to a lot of the experiences during the Battle of the Atlantic. Even though these supplies were available and the Carly floats were on board the ship, the likelihood of any life-saving equipment making it overboard with the personnel was by chance. And you were lucky to grab a life preserver. You were lucky to grab anything to hold on to stay afloat. And so in the event that you were fortunate enough to have these supplies, they definitely would have aided significantly in your survival chances on the open ocean.
Exactly. And it speaks to the training that was given to the sailors. He had the wherewithal to grab a life ring, so.
If you're unfortunate enough to be on a ship that was torpedoed or sinking for some other cause, it all depended on the time span of the sinking of what you would take with you when you went overboard. If the ship was sinking relatively at a steady pace, you might be lucky enough to throw overboard these lifeboat survival gear, such as the ration and the heater. You might be lucky enough to grab your life vest or a life ring, and then you might be even fortunate enough to throw over a few Carly floats, which would allow them to survive for a longer period of time. Lisa, thank you for bringing in these beautiful and unique artifacts that speak to that survival at sea. Currently at the museum, can we see these? Are they on display?
They are in display, and we have an exhibit room called Battle of the Atlantic, and they're represented in that room in talking about survival and preparedness during World War II.
Thank you, Lisa, again for bringing in these very unique artifacts that speak to survival at sea during a time of war.